Hey guys, LevelCap here, and today is Monday. It's a day before Armored Kill's coming out for the PC, and I've got an episode of Loadout for you. Now, for those of you not familiar, Loadout works where the fans can leave comments in the comment section of this video letting me know what kind of gun and accessories they'd like me to run with for next episode. Now I'll look through some of the top rated comments and pick one for the next episode of Loadout. Today's top comment comes from Vestu, who suggests the L85A2, Kobra, Heavy Barrel, 93R Medkit, and Squad Ammo. Now I have to admit I was kind of curious to try out the L82A5, not just because it has this new Airman camo, which I have to say is a little disappointing. I mean, it's whatever, it's a new camo, it just doesn't look that cool in general, but it did get a small patch change with the last patch, which is reducing its long reload time from 3.4 seconds to 3.35 seconds, which is basically negligible. It doesn't really do anything for the gun. So the L85A2 in my mind is pretty much an unchanged weapon with the patch. I really just wanted to see how it stacked up to, say, the M416, since the M416 has become so amazingly effective at range, and that's really where the L85A2 is supposed to function best, is at range, because the rate of fire with this gun is just not fast enough to be very effective in close quarters. Now it does have a decent hipfire accuracy, not the greatest in the world, but it does give it a slight advantage in close quarters where you don't have to actually bring up iron sights. But still, since the rate of fire at 650 rounds per minute is so low, it's not going to make a huge difference if you run into somebody with an AEK, which has become so popular since the last patch. I was running into tons of guys with the AEK, getting the first shot off, maybe even getting 2 shots into my enemy, and then getting dropped by them after they started shooting, just because the rate of fire of that gun is so much higher than mine. Now, I've always had quite a bit of nostalgia for this gun ever since Battlefield 2, although it was the L85A1 in Battlefield 2. Visually, pretty much the same looking gun. It had a burst fire mode in Battlefield 2, and it was quite good. I liked it a lot. It was for the medic class in BF2 also, so kind of staying true to how it was used in the original game. But I really just like the look of this weapon. It's got a very iconic bullpup design, and the green that's integrated with the default camo with this is a very cool looking thing. I mean, it works in nature, although you know, I'm clearly not using it here. It's a unique looking weapon and change from that sort of all black style of guns. And I've liked seeing it in certain movies and stuff too. So I like the look of this gun. I really want it to be good, but with the new, the recent updates in the latest patch, it just seems to be lacking quite a bit when compared to some of the more powerful assault rifles out there, like the M416, the AEK, and the M16A3. All of those weapons seem to be able to perform better than this gun, even at significant distances. Now, the L85A2 might make better use of your ammo at distance, because overall it provides a slightly more accurate platform than, say, an AEK, but even at distances the AEK will fire faster, and you'll miss a few more shots, but because of the higher rate of fire you'll still usually drop your opponent faster, so it can be very difficult using the L85A2, and I felt myself really modifying my playstyle a lot to be much more conservative with my peeking. Normally I feel fairly confident where I peek out from behind a corner with my ability to drop my foe, but this time I had to do very quick peeks, take a shot, and if my opponent wasn't down in the time that I was anticipating them to be dead, then I had to run back. So there was a lot of peeking, firing, getting a bunch of hit markers, and having to run back before getting a kill because I was going to receive too much return fire from higher rate of fire weapons. Now, the new gun to really compare all the other assault rifles to has become the M416. And when I compare this gun straight up against the M416, the M416 really is a much more accurate platform with an even higher rate of fire. The M416 fires at 100 rounds per minute faster than this weapon and has overall less recoil. Now, it doesn't have the same hipfire accuracy. The L85A2 has clearly better hipfire accuracy than the M416, but in most situations you're going to be aiming down the sights, so hipfire is only so useful, and frankly in close quarter situations where hipfire is the most useful is a really bad place to use the L85A2 because it has an atrocious reload speed. with its short reload, meaning there's a bullet left in the chamber, clocking in at 2.8, and its long reload clocking in at 3.35. That's just incredibly high, especially for anything that you intend to use in a close quarter situation. Now, as for the recoil on this weapon, it only has a 0.2 vertical recoil, which is actually on the lower end for assault rifles, but it has a 0.3 pull left and a 0.3 pull right, which is kind of medium for side-to-side recoil. But the problem with this is that the side-to-side recoil makes guns incredibly ineffective at longer ranges, because the vertical recoil is easy to compensate for with the mouse, but the side-to-side recoil, meaning it's pulling both to the left and right at rather random intervals, can be quite hard to compensate for with the mouse, so it becomes harder to aim at longer ranges. Not to mention the first shot recoil is multiplied by 2.5, which is definitely on the higher side of first shot multiplier. So when you first start shooting at somebody long range, you get a bit of a kickback and you have to immediately readjust, where a lot of other assault rifles, especially the M416, which has such a low first shot recoil, you can put several shots directly where you're aiming before you have to actually start compensating for the recoil, where the L85 is immediate compensation, so you can get one shot sometimes on target and then compensate, and this thing just seems to bounce much more at longer ranges. I mean, you can see here I'm really having a hard time keeping my crosshair on target, and ultimately I end up putting a lot of shots down range where I wouldn't have to put so many shots down range with an M416. Now here's one area where the L85A2 kind of pulls ahead of some of the other weapons out there, and this is something that I don't talk about a lot because not a lot of weapons really benefit in this department. But while you're aiming down sight and moving, you actually have a slightly more accurate cone of fire beginning, so you can actually kind of sidestep back and forth to try and dodge some of the incoming fire, giving your opponent a harder target, and you will actually have a better cone of fire than most weapons. For example, the M416 has a cone of fire of 1.0 while you're moving around and aiming down sights, and the L85 has a cone of fire of 0.7, which is tied with the F2000, which is another great gun for moving, running, and gunning, essentially. So you can still be fairly accurate with this weapon while moving around. So if you like to kind of dance a little while taking your shots or strafe left back and forth, this gun can actually pull through a bit better. Now, as for using the heavy barrel and no foregrip with this weapon, it's an interesting choice. I think you could actually play around with the foregrip to both improve your hipfire accuracy and reduce some of that side-to-side sway. Now, the foregrip does decrease your overall accuracy just slightly when you're aiming down the sights, but because this gun has a medium level of side-to-side sway, a foregrip might actually help a bit more at long ranges. So using a foregrip heavy barrel in your sight of choice, I think, would actually be potentially a little bit more effective than not using a foregrip. Now, a skilled player, a smart player, can do well with this gun as long as you set yourself up as more of a supporting role. You're not in the front of the pack, but you will run into a lot of situations where you turn a corner, you realize you have a slight jump on somebody, like you start firing half a second earlier than them, you should get the kill, then they start firing back at you and drop you much faster. That's going to happen a lot because of your slow rate of fire, and there's just no fixing slow rate of fire. You can start firing from the hip to get a slight advantage on your opponent, but even then, coming up against guns that fire at 900 rounds per minute, you're going to lose those firefights every time, and that can be quite frustrating. So, pre-patch, I thought the L85A2 still needed a bit of work to stay ahead of the game. They gave it a very, very, very small reduction in reload time, and just with some of the buffs that some of the other assault rifles are getting, I think the L85A2 really is lacking and falling behind the rest of the pack. So that's it for this episode of Loadout. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to rate the video if you did, and I'll see you guys next time. This is LevelCap, signing off.